Well, welcome to episode 2 of the Disabilities Podcast with me, Matt, and I'm joined this afternoon by Sam. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Matt. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm not bad. So, would you mind sort of telling us a little bit about yourself, what your interests are, what you do for work, that sort of thing?
Interest. That is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, as you know, I wear hearing aids, so probably the strangest thing I'm going to tell you is I actually really like music. I'm mad about music. So I was a big Oasis fan back in my younger days.
I like you. You were an Oasis fan. A lot of people weren't, I'm afraid, but...
No, they weren't. I think they've kind of gone a little bit off the boil in the last sort of five years or so, but 10 years or so maybe. But
Possibly,
I mean, I really did like Noel Gallagher's last album.
Yeah, Noel Gallagher's album was quite good. Yeah.
I
prefer Liam's stuff really, but
I think Liam's a much more charismatic frontman, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, Noel. I expected a little bit more from Noel because I always thought the Oasis B-sides were really quite incredible, and I really expected something a little bit different from him when he did that second album of his.
Yeah.
But no, I like music. I really love the great outdoors. I'm from Yorkshire.
Right.
So I'm just getting used to the fact there are very few hills here in Cambridge.
Yeah, we're not known for it. We're not known for it, for the hills, I'm afraid.
But there's plenty of really nice walking. Really like getting out towards Grantchester. We did the Magogin Hills the other week, but slightly disappointed. It was probably no more than maybe several metres incline. But I do like walking. I love music, and I really like reading. I'm a really avid reader. Fiction, novels, non-fiction. I collect joke books as a hobby. I've got hundreds. I had about nearly 500 at last count. So
You're having a laugh, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes, I am having a laugh.
Yeah.
But I have hundreds of joke books. So I mean, those things are the things that really interest me.
Oh, wow. And I know you like football because we were talking about that on the way there as well. You like your football.
Yeah, no, I love football a lot. I mean, I always have. I've been football mad ever since I was a very young age. I mean, I started by supporting Preston North End when I was at university, but I grew up supporting Bradford City.
Right, yeah.
But I do have a really guilty secret, Matt, and I don't know if I should share this with everybody, but I do have a guilty secret, and that is that I am actually a secret Manchester United supporter.
Oh, what's the reasoning behind that? I think we need to know the reasoning.
I mean, it started when I was really young. I was listening to I was watching my dad paper in the back room, and it was about 1991, and I remember watching them on the television, and I didn't know who they were at that particular point. And they were playing some European Cup tie, and they won. They beat Wrexham, and I followed them all the way through to the final, and they won.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so I supported them ever since, but I didn't actually realise how much they were hated and despised by pretty much 99% of all football fans at that particular point. So Manchester United was my great passion.
Oh, right. Okay, so we're talking about the disabilities. Now, we've got very kind of different disabilities, don't we? I mean, I can't see very well, and you can't sort of hear very well. So we have very different kind of disabilities. So would you mind sort of briefly explaining what your disability is and kind of how it affects your daily life?
Yeah, I mean, I think you together we would probably make quite a good double act, I think, don't you?
Yeah, I think we could do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I wear a hearing aid. I have worn them since I was about 4 years old. I think that the biggest challenge for me is that I started off with a moderate hearing loss, and now I have a severe to profound hearing loss. So in some ways, over sort of the last 10 years, I've become more disabled than perhaps than I was when I originally started wearing hearing aids. They can't really explain that to me. So in terms of my daily life and what's happened to me, it's harder perhaps being in conversations and perhaps staying in conversations. That's difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think understanding people is sometimes difficult. I think the technology helps. The hearing aids get better, and all the technology that goes with them gets better. So that does help. But I think one-to-one interaction is great. But I think sometimes it's just when you're actually in a conversation with several people, or if you're in a lecture hall, or if you go to a concert, for instance. I mean, I went to a really great concert about 6 months ago at Leeds Town Hall, and you couldn't always hear all the different notes and instruments that they were playing and so on.
Do you use things like lip reading?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I always thought I was a brilliant lip reader, and I went to one of these specialist hearing test centres in Leeds, and one of the tests was to test how well you lip read. And I thought, oh, I'll score 80-90% on this. I scored a dismal 30%.
Ooh.
It was shocking. But I think I lip read a lot more than I actually do. I think it's interesting when because I use WhatsApp quite a lot, and I do quite a lot of voice calls through WhatsApp.
Oh, WhatsApp's brilliant. Yeah.
And I'm looking at people's faces quite a lot on that to pick up their mouth movements and maybe their facial expressions. So I think maybe I do lip read a little bit more than the 30% that this test actually said.
Possibly. I mean, you can't always trust these things. I mean, they diagnosed me with 10% vision, but I can only really see light, really. That's all I can really see, so I don't really trust the diagnosis there. So if you don't mind, we'll sort of go into a little bit about how kind of my kind of experience as well. I'm blind since birth. I can't actually remember the name of the condition, and I should remember it. But how it affects me, I think in a lot of ways I've learnt to adapt to things because I've never had the sight. So I just always started by learning Braille or learning to use a cane. And I think that just really helped me throughout my education, which we'll get onto in a little bit as well about education. In terms of socialising, my biggest downfall is people use a lot of body language to talk about things like they'll nod or shake their head, and of course I can't see that they're doing that. And so if I'm talking and somebody doesn't want me to talk, and they use some kind of facial expression or a body language, and I don't know what they've just done, and it confuses me in a lot of ways. I don't know what you think to that, but
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, sometimes you're in a conversation, and there's several different conversations going on around you. Somebody might just say one word, one line, one phrase, and you don't pick that up, and the conversation then moves on in a different direction, and you actually still think they're still talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
and that can be really difficult because it kind of there's almost a beat in the conversation, and people are thinking, oh. How do we respond to this one?
Yeah.
Clearly, he's not hearing this too well. And sometimes they'll give you a nice curt smile, and the really kind and really good people say, "Hey, yeah, that's really brilliant. But what do you think about this?" And they try and pull you back into the conversation.
Yeah.
But people that are not quite as kind, sometimes kind of you skip over that. You know, they listen to the beat in the conversation, and they just skip over it. And sometimes that's difficult. And I think sometimes you probably understand this as much as I do from a sight point of view. You internalize that, and you have to you find like you're talking about adapting. You find methods that help you adapt.
Yeah. I'm always listening out for audio cues as to what's happening in conversations. A sort of funny thing that kind of affects me is people tend to forget. I mean, even my closest family members. Like, I had an argument with my cousin a couple of months ago because he said he's going, go and get that over there, and I said to him, what over where? You know, that over there. Kyle, I can't see that. You know, you've got to be more. But you know, so even close family members can still forget things, and.
But I think one thing in all that adapting and all the things that are happening around you, you know, I think some people might disagree with me on this, but I think we are probably both more aware and more conscious of what's happening in the world around us.
Yeah.
We're probably a lot more conscious of what people think, what people are saying, and what we can actually see or not see than probably they are. And I think it was interesting. I remember having a chat with one of my tutors a few months ago, and she said to me, yes, you might not hear things, but what you pick up really well is you always pick up the subtext.
Yeah.
You know, you always hear what people aren't necessarily saying, and I think sometimes it teaches you to listen or to search, to look for with your with the eyes of your heart rather than just your natural senses.
That's a really good point, because my next sort of thing was, can you think of any positives that it's affected your life?
I think it's certainly made me look at the world in a different way, and because you have to, and I think you have to be positive. I'm a very positive person by nature. And,
yeah, I like to think I am as well.
And I think you have to be, and I think you have to be positive. You have to be bold, and you have to do the best that you can do with what you've got. And I think the great thing is, we live in a fantastic age today where, unlike 30, 40, 50 years ago, there's loads of things. Society is really pro people like us, who have disabilities, and there's plenty of money out there to help us to do the things that we want to do, to achieve the things that we want to do in life. In the world of work, in HR, there's so many things that are there that help us to do a job. There are lots of things that help us to perhaps achieve things that we would never have achieved. I mean, my grandfather had a hearing aid. Both my grandparents had hearing aids, and they never really got out of manual jobs and manual tasks. And it wasn't because they were unintelligent.
No.
But because society wasn't really geared
aware
towards what they were facing.
Yeah. I think one thing for me that I really feel is quite an advantage is when I get to know people. A lot of sighted people, they judge people by their looks, and I can't do that. But the advantage is I actually can get to know the person, and get to know what they're like as a person. So that's a big advantage for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you do is you I suppose, like me, you might not be able to see somebody, but when you hear what somebody says and the tone of their voice, and other things, it allows you to maybe in the first instance to put that person in some kind of box, or some kind of I've come across that kind of person before.
Yeah.
And I think I'm very much the same. Sometimes I see a look. I might not be able to hear all the time what they're saying.
But you're looking for the visual cues, and I'm looking for the audio cues.
Yeah. And I think those things really help us. But I think in some ways, because we are so focused on looking for those things, that we're probably a lot more aware of human beings and the state of human nature than people that actually take all those senses for granted.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty time we should play a song, and then we'll get into talking about education.
Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Backbeat, the word is on the street that the fire in your heart is out. I'm sure you've heard it all before, but you never really had a doubt. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. And all the roads we have to walk are winding, and all the lights that lead us there are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. Because maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my wonderwall.
That is a classic. Oasis, Wonderwall. What do you think to that, Sam?
Oh, it was fantastic. We were just saying, weren't we, a second ago, we were just saying that was the very first Oasis single that I bought back in, it must be 1994. I remember hearing it at Scouts one evening. I think this is such a great song. I love the voice, love the sound. So I went and bought the cassette the next day.
I don't think anybody knew when it first came out how big it was going to become, though.
No, I mean, I think they've certainly dined out on that well and truly over the last 25 years. I can't believe that's 25 years ago. I'm suddenly feeling very old.
So, if we get into talking about education, how was your education affected by your disability? Did you even know about it when you were in your education?
Not so much. I mean, I was really lucky because my parents fought for me in the really early stages, so I probably didn't notice it really early on. I just kind of accepted a lot of things as they were, and so I always got the best hearing aids, best equipment, the best other things, and that really helped me. I think later on, particularly at university, I became aware of the fact that there was a lot more organised stuff going on and a lot more sort of organised things that were happening. So people would be asking me, do you need this? Do you need that kind of help? Do you need this kind of support? So I think I became more aware of it later on. I think particularly when I had to sort of fill in forms to get money for certain things. But generally speaking, my education was really good. I think part of that is because I've never seen myself as somebody that has a disability.
Yeah.
I mean, I see myself as somebody who wears hearing aids, and I think that's quite an important distinction. And because I would just see myself as somebody who like you has a lot of ability, a lot of natural ability, who just happens to either carry a stick or who wears hearing aids in the morning.
Yeah, your disability shouldn't stop you from doing what you want to do. I mean, look at me. I mean, nobody would have thought I'd have been able to sit here in a radio studio, but we've got braille labels on things, so I know where everything is, and I think the college has done really well.
I mean, I think one of the things that really did help me was, particularly helped me achieve, was actually thinking about my hearing aids and the technology, particularly when I worked in radio, was actually I've got programs on these hearing aids that allow me to wear headphones and to be able to hear what somebody's actually saying outside at the same time, so I can make use of the loop system inside the hearing aid. But I could also have a conversation with somebody that may have been stood several meters away at the same time.
That's really good. So when I talk about my education, obviously I'm still in education, so but when I started at primary school, I had the classic thing that the schools do, which was, well, we've never had a student like you. And actually before that, they said to my parents, look, we don't think he'll last in mainstream. We think he should go to a special needs school. But my mum, she fought it, right to the end, and I'll always be grateful for that, because I don't think, had I gone to a special needs school, I would have got as much out of it as what I did. And then there was a thing of teachers had to learn how to adapt. They're used to doing things on the board, and of course then I had to have them described. And it was also, for me, it was a little bit embarrassing in a way, because I used to have a TA come around with me, which now I don't mind, and I'm grateful for it, but back then it was, something you don't really want.
And I always found the hardest bit I found was sometimes was all the extra kit I had to carry around with me. So when I was in classes, to make sure that I could hear what was going on.
Yeah,
and the room was probably no bigger than the studio is. I had to carry around these sort of huge lumps of electronics in boxes, and I always found that really embarrassing. And I remember it was almost like the walk of shame on the Weakest Link, having to walk to the front and hand my little microphone to somebody. And I found that really difficult. But I think it was for my benefit. And I didn't feel that I missed out. I mean, academically, I did great at GCSE. I did great at A level. But sometimes it was just kind of like, oh no, do I really have to do this? I kind of feel like the odd one out. And I think particularly when you're in your teens, and you really do want to fit in with your peers, and you really do want to make friends. And I think how people are, how people are noticed, because like you were saying, I had to have things sort of transcribed for me, or I had to have things done in a certain way. You become aware of all that. And
you do.
You suddenly become aware that actually you're not quite the same as everybody else, which you might not have noticed when you were a little bit younger.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, I mean, I used to have a Braille specialist come around with me because they used to have to convert everything into Braille. Also, they were teaching me Braille at that time because I didn't know it before I started primary school. And a funny story, so one time a student thought that my Braille specialist was my dad and thought I was bringing my dad to school. I mean, I don't know, maybe he looked like me or maybe he didn't. I'm not really too sure, but they thought he was my dad anyway.
How did you get out of that one?
I just had to just say, no, he's not my dad. He's there to convert things into Braille for me. But I was embarrassed at the time, but it's a bit of a funny story now. So yeah,
It is. I mean, I remember because my parents were Christians and I grew up in a church environment. And whenever we went anywhere, I don't know how it happened, but I always ended up sitting in the part of the church where they had the people that were signing. And then, although I wasn't sat in their particular section, I might be sat a row or 2 rows behind. And all of a sudden, they'd see me, they'd spot me, and they'd start signing at me really enthusiastically. And I had to go and tell them afterwards, thank you so much for that. It was really helpful.
Yeah,
but, I don't actually need it. Or I can't sign anyway. I don't actually understand.
Oh, you don't know sign language. Oh,
so
okay.
it had no effect on me whatsoever. But it was just quite funny in its own way and they were very well meaning. And had I needed sign language, then I probably would have been very glad of it. But it was quite amusing in its own way.
Yeah. So then when I move on into secondary school, I went to school and they'd already had a blind student there. She was completely blind, and they had an idea. Obviously, nobody should be the complete kind of standard setter because everybody's different, but they had an idea, and I thought they were very well kind of trained up. And something that was a lot better, because when I was in primary school, I experienced a little bit of bullying. Nothing major, but it was, a little bit... And I think it was at that time students didn't have really a knowledge of why I was different. They could just see me walking with a cane and they weren't sure. So I'm not sure if you ever experienced that. Maybe you don't want to talk about that. Or
yeah, I mean, I can't say I was ever really bullied as such. I mean, there is a funny story. I remember my first day in primary school.
Yeah. And
the big guy who was the school bully, he was quite curious about this young lad who turned up who was wearing hearing aids. And he came over, sort of started talking to me. And he said to me, he said, if anybody gives you any trouble, you tell me. Wow. And he raised his fist in the air to make me acutely aware of what might happen to anybody there.
Yeah.
So consequently, I was quite well looked after, and we became quite firm friends. My mum was quite alarmed that this guy had even invited us round, me around for tea at his house, and that we actually in turn invited him round, but he actually turned out to be quite a nice lad. He was probably just misunderstood, but I was quite lucky, and I think because of that I actually got on with different people. I think I was able to earn respect, I think, too, in some ways, because I was a good rugby player, so I played well, played for some of the local teams, and I played football and things like that. So I was able to earn respect, but I think sometimes I do. Sometimes if some people don't like being outwitted by somebody who is perceived to have
less ability
than them,
which isn't true in any way. But
most people use that, and they might say, well, then they might make some remarks about you being deaf or whatever, because that's basically. That's the only thing that they've got left in their armory to do.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about earning respect. I actually earned kind of a bit of respect in a way, because it used to get to me, but then one day I learnt to just kind of laugh it off, and people used to say, that's amazing. How do you people are making all these kind of remarks, and you're coming back with very quick comebacks And I just said, well, because you can either laugh or you can cry, and you might as well laugh, because that's
it. I mean, the great Les Dawson many years ago said, he said, if you don't laugh, you will cry, and it's a choice that you make. And I think you're right there. The more you laugh, the better it is, the better you will be, and the happier that you'll feel. I mean, some people, the amount of times I make real light of my disability is unbelievable. Some people will say, how do you feel? How do you feel about being deaf? Or they might say something like, said, "Oh, Sam, I'm sorry I said that. I didn't mean that." I thought it doesn't matter. You can say what you like to a deaf person. People, that you just make light of it.
Yeah, I mean, take it from somebody who's blind. Blind jokes are the funniest thing that I ever hear, and I always say to my friends or to my family, make blind jokes, and in my family, blind jokes are the thing that everybody does it in my family, because we know that. I think it's different if it's somebody you don't know, but people that I know, I love to make jokes and things.
I think it makes you feel better. Laughter makes the world go round, and it just shows you don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
I think that you have to be careful that where you use it. But like you say, if it's amongst your family and your friends and people that care about you, then having a cheerful heart really makes all the difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd like to talk also for you. Obviously, I can't really kind of get into it very much because I'm still in education, but about kind of the working environment. How that's been affected by your disability.
I think a lot of it comes down to technology. I mean, like I said, with the hearing aid that I wear, when I worked in radio, I could put headphones on, and so we could make adjustments there. Making sure that telephones have like a T setting, they have a telecall, so I can actually use those with my hearing aid rather than having to take my hearing aid out. Things like that. I think in the working world, I think because of the kind of environment that we live in today, that people aren't discriminated against, and that working environments don't stop people from actually being able to get paid work. If people want to work, then employers will bend over backwards, and that's certainly been my experience. All the people that I work for have really bent over backwards to get me what I needed, whether that's the right telephone systems or equipment, or making sure that there's loop systems in rooms and that kind of thing. I mean, my experience is that generally the people that I work for, it's been really positive. And if something hasn't been working, then they've gone out and got me the equipment that I've needed. I mean, I'm at Ridley Hall here in Cambridge now, and I mean they've bent over backwards getting loop system put in, and in some ways they've actually found me quite a benefit to the college, because I've been able to test equipment for them in a way that they haven't had the opportunity to do before.
Yeah, because if you can hear it quite well, then it must be pretty good kind of equipment, I guess. Yeah,
it is. And my experience of the working world is that people have employed me on my ability, but they recognise that in order for me to do my job to the best of my ability, they need to make sure that they have the equipment.
Yeah. So we're going to end part 1 of this week's Disabilities podcast with a little bit of Joy Division. What do you think to that, Sam?
Absolutely. I love Joy Division. They're fantastic. One of my favourite Manchester groups.
Well, here we go then.